Hello and welcome to Prospects of Pro, sponsored by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. I am your host, Nate Tice. We are doing early declares and transfer portals today, just checking in, seeing some names that were dropped. There was, of course, one at the very top that we will start with, but this is what December does best. This is this type of part of the calendar. Oh, that guy's transferring. Oh, that guy's declaring. Maybe he should go back. But it's going to be pretty interesting to talk about these movers and shakers. So to help me do that is the athletics draft expert, Dane Brugler. How you doing today, Dane?
I'm good. It's funny with college football changing. Every year it seems like every offseason looks a little different. This year, transfer portal and the underclassmen deadline's a little different this year with the All-Star games. And next year will be even more different when we have the playoff, which is going to start the week before Christmas. It's that first round. So at this point next year, while right now it kind of feels dead a little bit, at this point next year, it'll be ramping up and talking about all the deadline or all the matchups. So it'll be every year we're going to see some type of evolution. It seems like when it comes to college football, and next year will be particularly interesting. But yeah, this year with these underclassmen, we new timeline this year. Usually the deadline for underclassmen to declare is always a week after the national title game. It's usually around January 15th. This year, they're doing a soft deadline for underclassmen. And that's going to be January 5th. And that's basically, if you want to be in an all-star game, basically declare by the 5th. That way, and then on January 9th, an underclassmen list will be sent to all the NFL teams. I'll get my hands on it and we'll share it with everybody. But that's when, and then not till January 9th is when Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl can announce any true juniors that they are inviting, or let's be honest, this stuff is happening already behind closed doors. Guys can officially accept. So that's why, even though we've had some declarations, plenty of declarations so far, we haven't had any true juniors accept their Senior Bowl or Shrine Bowl invites. That's the reason why they cannot do that officially until January 9th. And so January 5th, soft deadline. January 9th is when All-Star Games can announce that. Official list will be sent to teams. And then for guys that aren't 100% sure yet, there is a January 15th final deadline to declare. So a little bit different this year with everyone being eligible for those All-Star Games.
It's to make sure the NFL teams like you. Do they like me, or do they like me? January 15th, is that like, oh, they just like me? Okay, maybe go back. Or look at how that transfer portal is right now, because it seems just more and more names just crop up every day. It seems like ones where I'm like, that guy's staying in. Okay, right? That's how it's going to work. You mentioned the schedule stuff, but that's such a great point with the college football playoff. It really seems to me the NBA's in-season tournament was kind of a good indicator of this. Is like right when college football ends, you have that Army-Navy game. It seems like everyone's trying to fill in that one Saturday before NFL goes, hey, we can take over Saturdays too, like they're doing this weekend. Right. But it's, so the NBA has their in-season tournament right at that same time, that's like the Kentucky Derby and everything, all those NBA, NFL games, boxing matches right after the NFL draft. Just get that out of the way so we can get into our fun. That's kind of how they have to fill in around the NFL schedule. But that's great information on the early declare stuff, because I was not aware of that. And like you said, it seems the last couple of years they're really trying to revamp a lot of this draft kind of process too. The All-Star games, getting juniors, changing the combine drills a few years ago. It seems, times are changing, it's kind of every year I feel like there's going to be adjustments after, for so many years it felt kind of static at least.
Right. And it's still, you have to be 3 years removed from high school to be eligible. Yes. I don't see that part changing. It's good hard. And they're the 1%ers, the less than 1%ers who realistically could go to the NFL and be productive guys as after their freshman year, or even out of high school. Brock Bowers was one of those guys. Right. There are those fewer than 1%ers, but for the vast majority of college football players, getting that full 3 years, I think, is really important. So, I get why some push back on that a little bit and say, hey, if you're good enough, you should be able to go. But no, I'm in favor of the rule. I think the
Yeah.
3 years, I think it makes sense. And with NIL now, I think we're gonna hear less and less about it because if you're really that good, you have a chance to make money in college. And
That's what makes me feel better about it. Yeah.
right. It's not the
Yeah.
same as an NFL contract, but it's still, an opportunity to get an education,
Yep.
make money, and develop as a football player,
Yeah.
instead of just going straight to being an NFL player and washing out after 1 year because, hey, you mentally, physically, emotionally weren't ready for that. So, yeah, I don't see that 3-year rule changing anytime soon.
We had a former GM come in and talk to us when I was with the Falcons, and he was a former NBA and talking about the NBA and talking about their guys in the draft because someone asked him about like how do you feel about the one and done, how do you feel about high school guys, like, and he said there's the arguments to for it and against it. It's there is let them mature, let them get
Mhm.
more experience physically and mentally. They would talk about NBA. This is a huge thing is the, culture shock, the locker room shock of being also on an NBA team, which is a huge jump for anybody. But then also talking about, well, but if you get them in early, you get them acclimated earlier. And
Mm.
that I know that's always kind of stuck with me, but I always just feel for NFL, you don't see American football played when kids are young. It's not like a 7-year-old can hang on the court with a 15-year-old in basketball, like a
Right.
12-year-old, in basketball or soccer or some of these other sports. What is the beauty of them is that anyone can pick up and play them, ages doesn't matter. It's kind of fun. You can just pick up the ball and go. American football is just the physicality of it all. Maybe 7-on-7, but at least
Right.
NFL and college football, I just always think that physicality needs those 2-3 years and at a time when a lot of guys are developing, a lot of human beings are developing. So
Right.
I've always kind of stuck with that, even as much as I love the old ABA stories with like Moses Malone and stuff.
Mhm.
So, speaking of early declares, kind of had one at the top that was expected.
Mhm.
One of the names that we expect to hear very early this in late April, and that is Drake May from North Carolina. Declared early, of course. He's a redshirt sophomore, which I think we should always just remind people. Most of these quarterbacks are a little older. So, but May, I think we have spent a lot of words on May on this show, but anything to add that has happened maybe the last few weeks where he's maybe had a couple struggles or anything like that, but him declaring is kind of expected, Dane.
Yeah, no question. I do think that I came out with my updated top 50 that first week in November, and Drake May was number one on that top 50. If I had to do a top 50 right now, I'm not confident that he would still be at number one for me, just because
Ooh.
those final few weeks were really tough for him.
Yeah.
He struggled to find answers against Clemson, against NC State, two of the better, if not the best defenses on that North Carolina schedule, and it gives you a little bit of pause. And so I was waiting for him to officially declare or to actually go back and watch those tapes, and so probably here this week I will do that, and have a better idea of, okay, what were the issues here? Because the issues aren't all on him. I mean, he just watching on TV, he was not
Yeah.
getting protection. The
Yeah.
receivers looked like they were very disinterested in running routes. I mean, it was, but I don't want to make excuses for him. I want to really watch the tape
Yeah.
and focus on, what could have he done better or different, to make the end result different. So, um, I'm interested to do that before I really boil down these quarterback rankings and saying, okay, I feel really comfortable. This guy's quarterback one, this guy's quarterback two, and all that. But yeah, this was expected. Drake May is going to be, I 100% believe he will be quarterback one for some teams. I think we've mentioned this before, but just a reminder that there's no such thing as consensus for these quarterback rankings. We
Ever.
have to kind of remind people of
Ever.
that. Yeah, no, even Trevor Lawrence, Joe
Trevor
Burrow,
Lawrence.
like
Yep.
the best quarterbacks that we've seen come out go number one overall. They were not consensus
Nope.
guys from team to team, and especially that gets true when you talk about quarterback two, quarterback three. So
And I
I
know for
yes,
sure one team had RG3 over Andrew Luck. I know
yes,
that is that
exactly.
I know that for a
Yes.
fact. So
Zach
that is
Wilson was
yes.
over Trevor Lawrence for some teams.
Yep.
Tua above Joe Burrow. I mean, because these guys end up going one when we expect them to, we kind of just, oh, well, everyone was going to take him number one. Not
It's,
true.
it's no.
And I don't think it's true this year.
Nope.
Now, whoever ends up going number one, he'll forever be known as a former number one overall pick, but it will not be a consensus. And so, yeah, I definitely believe Drake May will be quarterback one for some teams. And who knows, maybe Jaden Daniels could even get a few of those. He could sway some votes there in an NFL room. It would not surprise me at all when I've seen some quarterback rankings before from some teams, and it just kind of blew me away. And you just don't know exactly what they're looking for, how this interview process. All it takes is one or a couple
interview. And weird workout,
and all of a sudden you're bumping a guy down. It's not necessarily because the other guy was that much better, but maybe one guy just stumbled in the process for one reason or another. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of keep that in mind as we talk about these quarterbacks for the next 4.5 months. But yeah, Drake May is going to be yes, it will be. And I was talking to Mays last night, and it's going to be a fun next 5 months. And he's like, yeah, maybe for you.
Oh my God.
As a Bears fan, understandably, it's going to be a little interesting for that fan base.
Both of us wrote in our mock drafts how we talked about the Bears at 1, and then even on the show yesterday, or on Sunday, I was really praising the defense and just going, man, the Bears are fascinating. Fields is fascinating. I am so excited to see how this plays out. And he was like looking at me like, no. He's like, yeah, but no. But I get the exact same reaction that he gave me. I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
I asked him, and I'm going to ask you the same question. What if you had to put a number percentage on the Bears keeping Fields? I'm sorry, we're already getting off track, but I want to hear your answer here. If you had to put a number percentage on what if the Bears keeping Fields, trading that number one overall pick, they could stick and pick, but chances are they would trade that pick. Keeping Fields for at least one more year, what would you put that percentage at?
I would put it at 20-80 or 25-75. I'll go with that. 25% that they keep Fields and 75% that they trade the pick. I'm curious in those rooms who they prefer, because even for me, it was because it's just even some of the blemishes of these quarterbacks that are coming out, Caleb Williams and Drake May. It's like, I'm just curious, like what they would prefer, because one, and then also, the connotations of taking another North Carolina guy, which I think is stupid anyways, but it's just one of those. Yeah, I know, but it's just all these things, these other underlying factors. But I also, with Eberflus and how the defenses looked, I think very realistically, it's like, wow, there's a lot of tangible on-field stuff that even for me, as someone that just briefly watches these guys in all 22, I'm like, oh, this is working. And it's not just because of Montez Sweat, it's Kyler Gordon, but also all these other guys, but they're playing really well. And I'm like, that's the first sign of good things are to come. If the guy is supposed to be a defensive guy in that unit, and once he took over the unit, it's cleaned up, and it looks guys like random vets are kind of ascending as well. It's like, okay, all right, well, hold on, guys. So let's give this another month. But again, this is easy for me as a neutral fan. What would you put the percentage at? I thought 25-75s, which if you asked me a couple of weeks ago, it would have been even lower.
Right. I was going to say, with how Sunday played out, I think, you inch up. I would probably go a little bit lower than you.
Yeah.
I think Ryan Poles is in a enviable position where he's going to have a chance to draft his guy. I mean, I think, and if Justin Fields is playing well as Ryan Poles, you're like, heck yeah.
It's win-win.
Boost that trade value up.
Exactly.
And we've talked about before how, Sam Darnold got a 2, a 4, and a 6. And so Fields is going to get what? A 2, a 3, and a 4, a 2 and a conditional 2.
Yeah.
I think that becomes really interesting, especially for the teams that are on the outside looking in when it comes to getting a quarterback in this draft. Like, Atlanta is obviously they didn't like Justin Fields enough to draft him in that draft when they were picking 4th overall.
Yeah.
But things are a little bit different now, and they're in a position where this
game.
And the skill talent they have, the offensive line is, I would say, above average. I mean, you plug in a quarterback that's clearly talented, that maybe in that situation could really ascend. It's fascinating. But I would put it probably a little bit lower, closer to 20 or maybe even lower than that right now. And that's subject to change as we go through this final month of the NFL calendar. But the chance to draft your own guy, if you're Ryan Poles, this might be your last year as an NFL general manager. You have no idea.
Right.
You might never get that chance again. You have, and it's just assuming he loves one or both or multiple quarterbacks in this draft, you have a chance to go get one, reset that quarterback clock. That's those factors I think win out at the end of the day. What they do with this coaching staff, that obviously plays a big factor as well. But yeah, it'll be really fascinating here this next month just to see how that team plays, specifically the quarterback. But yeah, Drake May is going to be part of this conversation all year round.
Yep.
And if the Bears end up keeping Fields, it'll be a lot like last year where we were like, okay, well, where are the Bears going to trade the pick? It ended up being Carolina, and then we get to debate about who that team is.
Team's gonna take.
Right. I mean, right now the Raiders are picking 6th, I think. They keep moving up. They have a chance to maybe be in striking distance.
Hey, Washington has made a strong sink to the bottom in the second half of the year. They've made a nice race to the bottom themselves. So keep an eye on them.
So many dominoes here that are going to play out these. Coaches coming and going, and the draft order. So yeah, it'll be. We'll talk more about that when we have that more info. But
solidifies.
Yeah, exactly. Drake May is gonna be at the top no matter what.
Yeah, no, he's I think a very good player. I'm very excited to watch it. Watching Fields the last 3 weeks though, it's been like, oh boy, this is what I was hoping to see, and this is weird because I had kind of started going like, well, I think this is what he is, guys, and then now he's actually showing growth, so he's gonna be fascinating. But you mentioned that May had some, maybe some struggles against Clemson late in the year. 2 Clemson defenders declared, Jeremiah Trotter and Nate Wiggins. Wiggins is corner 1 for you still, or did someone else get the bump recently? I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but I know he is high on your board. I think we both like Wiggins a lot. Trotter as well is high up there. Interesting off-ball linebacker class. Interesting, not in a good way. But those 2 guys declared as well. Any thoughts on Wiggins and Trotter that you want to update, or any other players that were early declares that you want to talk about?
I think Wiggins is going to be near the top of the conversation when you talk about these corners. The lack of play strength really worries me, that position. But I still think when you have that type of athleticism, the speed that he brings, the suddenness in his feet, and he does it. He didn't allow many big plays on tape. He saw 41 targets this year, gave up only one play of 20 plus yards. So not only does he have the traits, but he played really dang well down the stretch this year. We talked about those 2 chase down tackles, forced fumbles that saved touchdowns on the Miami tape, North Carolina tape. So again, this is a fast, fluid athlete. He has on-ball production. He can be an impact starting corner on the perimeter, and so he has the tools to be one of the better defensive players in this class. Now Trotter. He's a guy that I heard people talking about, first round pick and things like that. Look, Jeremiah Trotter's not a first round pick. Like I think that's pretty clear. He is going to be more of and I don't think he's going to be a second round pick either. He's just the struggles in coverage, and when you force him to make plays in space, that's where it gets a little rough. Now I do think he could stick in this league and be a TJ Edwards type of linebacker.
That's a good comparison. That's a really good person, actually.
I think, and I mean, Edwards, I believe, was undrafted. So, that type of linebacker who gets underappreciated, but, once he gets in the right situation, just makes plays because, I mean, he loves the thump. He's very active.
Want him going forward.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And he does he's made some plays in coverage, but he has 2 pick sixes the last 2 years. Had one against Notre Dame this year and picked off Sam Hartman. But overall in coverage, he doesn't have that fluidity that you want. That you see that lower body tightness that can really be exposed in space for shifty runners. So this is a guy that I think he's an instinctive hammer. He's got pedigree, obviously, with his dad. He's been molded for this for a long time. So I'm not betting against him. But I don't think he's going to be as drafted as high as maybe some people think.
He's one of those guys that's like, he ends up almost being like a super role player in the NFL. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but more of you get used this way, very specific ways. But I think you nailed it on the head. Of course he did, but it's just, I think it's like he has a limited skill set, but what he is good at, he's good at. And I think it's just that you have to be realistic about it. Other guys that declared early, other players, we had Leonard Taylor from Miami, defensive tackle.
That was a questionable one because he former 5-star guy, like he was one of the highest recruits in that 3 years ago in that class. This year, man, you're watching Miami, you're like, "Is he even on the field? I'm not." Oh, yeah,
Not
there
for
he
me.
is.
I
He
thought
just
he had a number
quiet.
change.
Yeah, right. Just quiet
Yep.
season for him, and I mean, kind of doing his tape, working on his report, I'm like, man, I'm beating him up way too much because he is talented, but at some point you got to make plays. And he
Mhm.
did make some play when I watched him over the summer. He did make plays on his sophomore tape, but looking at this year's tape, and it's just like I don't know. A lot of these guys, when you're that highly recruited and you know you're talented. I mean, you believe you're 3 years and out. But man, he just did not put together the 2023 that I think he needed to ascend and be that next guy. I mean, you see flashes.
Yep.
He's a former basketball player. You see that athleticism out there, but at some point you have to translate that athleticism to impact production, and he has not done that to this point. But he's 21 years old. You love the talent.
Yes.
Where does he get drafted? That's an interesting conversation because again, you're betting on traits and potential,
Mhm.
and the process will be important for him. The interviews, the workouts, just to convince teams that hey, I'm still a work in progress, but man, if you invest in my potential, it'll pay off for you. So Leonard Taylor's that's an interesting one. Miami had 3 really interesting defensive players declare with him, Cameron Kitchens and James Williams. Williams, another big time recruit, 5-star
Mhm.
guy. He's unique because he's 6'5", 215 as a safety. And it's like, okay, what are we doing with you? Where are we playing you? Are you going to be a J-Ron Curse type of guy?
Mhm. Mhm.
You're not Isaiah Simmons. He's not Isaiah Simmons type of athlete. And he's not Kyle Hamilton because doesn't have that type of football instincts and ability that we see Kyle Hamilton have. So what is he? What type of role? I think that's going to be really important for him just to figure him out. And then Kitchens, I think, is probably the most well known of the group.
Yep.
I,
I
there's a
think
lot of
you and I kind of found like a nice consensus with him. It's like you like the game, but it's like you got to realize he has some limitations as well as like an athlete.
Yeah, he is not a top tier athlete,
Yeah.
basically. And, I think what he runs is going to be really interesting. So the physical traits don't wow you. Now, he's not like a bad athlete by any means, but he
Yeah.
doesn't
He's
have
just
those top tier physical traits. So,
yeah.
but at the same time, I do like him because I think he's a really well balanced skill set. I
Mhm.
think he plays with awareness. I mean, you don't have as many picks as he did in college without some type of a
He's around the
ball
ball.
hawking
Yeah.
awareness. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So, um, best case scenario, he could be an Eddie Jackson type, but I think that's best case scenario.
Yep.
More likely, he's a guy that's going to be fighting for a starting job, and so he's really interesting. But again, I think when you look at the production, he over the last 25 years, 3 Miami players have had double-digit interceptions. Ed Reed,
Ed Reed.
Sean
Yeah. Sean
Taylor,
Taylor.
and
Cameron
this guy. So,
Kitchens.
pretty good group to be a
Sweet
part
list.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think you're looking at him as a split safety. He does have
He's
enough
a
range
quarter
to play
safety
the
to me. Let
post.
him play.
Yeah.
Let him be smart. Work. Get
Let him
helped a
work
little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
drive top down,
Yep.
maybe some 2 deep shells. I mean, let him so
That's how
he's
I see him.
not. Yeah, I think we see him pretty similar, but he's not that first rounder that we thought.
Nope.
I probably more of a third round type of guy, but someone that does have a chance to be a starter in the league.
Yeah, I like him in a lot of certain spots. I really like him. If you like went
Hmm.
to, they don't really need him. Well, they might. Like the 49ers. I would really
Mm,
like him there because they are so much quarters.
hmm.
But like a team, even like the Ravens, like because they just again they like smarter guys and they kind of find uses of guys with athletes. But again, they run a lot of quarters. But guys, funky looks. You want to put him with a smart defensive coach, and you'll like him a
Right.
lot. But if you want him to be the dude like running around being Minka Fitzpatrick. It's like, no, 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 no. So
Right.
it's like, you just got to be understanding what they are. But I thought the Leonard Taylor, I'm glad because I finally studied him because underwhelmed with him early in the year. And I was still underwhelmed with him a little bit. Ryan be a little bit different position, but narrative wise, both defensive linemen, but narrative wise reminds me of Mario Edwards. Remember,
Mm.
like big,
Out of
big
Florida State.
recruit. Yep, Florida
Yeah.
State ends up going in the second round. He was a Raider.
Yep.
He's kind of stuck around the league a little bit as a nice role player, but like just one of those huge recruits, had some traits, and so someone's going to kind of maybe take a chance on him because of that, because like what you said with the flashes. So
Yeah.
that was when, as you were talking, I was like, man, this kind of sounds familiar.
Well, and it's funny because there are so many different scouting philosophies from team to team, scout to
Yes,
scout. Some scouts absolutely believe in grading to the flashes, and
they do.
that's a thing. And so, if he tests the way he's capable of, Leonard Williams could, maybe go higher than we think, based or higher than the tape says he should. But again, because it's based on the traits and what
Yep.
teams think he could grow into. So yeah, he's a tough one to peg right now, exactly where he'll be drafted.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is again what I said at the top of the show: the underclassmen being able to go to the All-Star games, but we just don't know who yet.
Yeah.
Cameron Kitchens, put him in the Senior Bowl. And let's give him a chance to show what he can do. I think that would be a smart decision by Kitchens to. I'm just assuming. I don't
Yep.
know. I'm assuming he's going to get that invite. But if I'm Kitchens, if I'm his representation, hey, go play in that game. This is
Yeah.
a safety group that is, Tyler Nubin from Minnesota is my top safety at this point in the process.
It's wide open though.
But it really is wide open at the
Yeah.
top. So, these underclassmen having a chance to really make a name for themselves. Leonard Taylor, go do it. Go make some plays in an All-Star game on
Interior defensive
one-on-ones.
lineman too is another class that's
Right.
wide. Like you can easily rise if you have a good offseason.
Sure. So yeah, I think that's important to remember as we discuss these underclassmen.
Yeah, Chop Robinson from the edge from Penn State declared, which
What do you think of him?
I'm very comfortable with the comparison to him, which is Yannick Ngakoue, and we're a DPR more of a DPR type, but I mean that like a plus DPR, meaning designated pass rusher type, but pass first, has some juice. Can times frustrate me, where he gets washed out a little bit, where his moves do not work, and he can doesn't have the recovery because he can kind of get latched on because he's a little undersized. Against the run, he's iffy, and that's what you just have to understand. But the thing is, in this class, he has a trait that not a lot of guys do, which he can truly get after the passer. Yeah. So I like him almost more of I would be comfortable more with him in like the 20s in the first round and later and even more early second round, just because of that skill set. But he does have that juice that not a lot of guys have.
Yeah, I think when I wrote my report on Chop right after he declared, and I came away liking him more than I thought as a run defender. But to your point, he has some of those limitations because of his size. Yeah, he does a nice job.
It's not effort. It's not effort.
No,
that's the thing. It's just natural limitations.
Yeah, but he does do a nice job locking out, setting an edge. It'll just be a lot tougher to do that in the NFL, especially against doubles, but even single blocks. But he is a guy that some pass rushers, they need a runway. This guy doesn't need to build up any speed. He accelerates. He goes 0 to 60 in a blink. You see the suddenness in his movements. He'll use. And I do think he has like natural rush instincts, which I wasn't sure coming in. I thought, maybe this is a guy that just wins with speed, but you see different well-timed swipes. And then the way he can dip his body, he'll throw in a ghost move.
He's learning to go out and in too. I kind of use that threat of speed, which is always like, there we go. That's what you want to see.
Right. And so I think for him, it's proving that, hey, I'm not a one-trick pony. That's going to be a key for him during this draft process. Prove that I'm not just a pass rusher. That might be what I do best. That first step explosiveness, my aggressive hands. My best trait is getting after the quarterback, but that's not that's not my only thing that I do. So I think for a team that's looking for that wide 9 defender, a guy that can be schemed across the front, but you put him wide 9, let him use that speed. Chop Robinson, he's a guy that teams are going to really like, but where do you draft him? That's going to be an interesting part of this whole conversation, because again, you graded the flashes, you watch, the Iowa tape, you watch the Rutgers tape, he has some moments where it's just, impressive. So that it'll be interesting with Chop Robinson again, exactly where teams feel. I know some teams have him as a 3rd round grade. Other teams like him, believe he'll go in the 1st round because of the pass rush. So somewhere between the first round and third round is where he's
Yeah.
going to go. And it's just a matter of where teams feel comfortable.
Well, and also this class is more pluggers, more strong types,
Mm-hmm.
edge setters, 280-ish pounders, and
Yeah.
he's a different flavor than those guys. It's like having like last year's class, being a big receiver and amongst all the small receivers.
Well, and
It's
it's
like you're
always,
just a different flavor.
yeah, it's always funny when I talk to like area scouts about, hey, I see this guy as like a first round pick. What do you think? And those types of conversations. And, and then they say, oh, I saw more of a second rounder, but they always throw in they have to say, I have no idea what the rest of the country looks like. So, you know what? Even though I have a second round grade on him, he might be the 25th best player in the
That's a
country.
great
Or,
point. Yeah.
so it's like
Yes.
teams usually only have between 15 and 20 first round grades in
Yeah.
a draft. And then, so if you're a playoff team and you're picking in the 20s, you're drafting a second
That's
round
it.
player.
Yeah.
And so Chop Robinson might not be a consensus first round pick for teams, but he has a good chance to go in the first round because of the value he brings as a pass rusher. And, I think it's an interesting when you stack these guys and you say, okay, I graded him as a second round pick, but then you stack them and it's like, well, actually, I like him more than this guy, and
Yep.
all of a sudden he's top 25 pick for you.
And he has the trait, though, one skill that is so highly valued, which is he can get after the quarterback. It's like, that's the thing, is that one, it's like, oh, he's limited, he can only do this, and that might be a negative in that area. It's like, well, that one thing that he's positive in, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's a good thing to have. So
I thought it was interesting. He was voted team MVP. Him and Olu Fashanu were voted the team MVPs by the Penn State coaches and players.
They just love watching one-on-ones every day.
Yeah. But that says something, that he was voted the team MVP. Like that's something that's really interesting.
That is.
I don't. That. Right. It's and that's a team that's got plenty of talent on it.
Yeah. No, that's well. If Felix and Yuduke Uzama could go in the first round, Chop is a half tier at least above that. So that's
every year we see these. Another Penn State, Jason Owe.
Yes.
Who's the pass rusher out of Washington that went to Tampa?
Tron.
Yes, we every year we see these pass rushers.
It's coming along.
Late first. Is he? I have not watched him. But that's when you play a certain position, that gives you a little boost. We talked about it when we talked about the mock draft, about the offensive tackles getting a boost. Quarterbacks, corners, pass rushers, receivers, tackles. Those are the positions more than others that'll get that boost.
Absolutely. There was another player that's not a premium position, Cam Little, a kicker from Arkansas, declared early. So that was notable. I just had to throw that.
I'll sit back and let you.
No, I have not watched Cam Little. I am sorry, but rookie kickers are all the rage right now. Look what's just happening in Dallas right now with 60-yarders getting boomed over the net. I can't get over that.
It doesn't make sense. I mean,
it doesn't. The ball pops off his leg. Like we talk about that with quarterbacks sometimes. But like having said that, like watch Joe Flacco, it's pretty funny because he had such a strong arm, and watching him throw, and then the ball still kind of zips out of his hand. It's like, oh wow, you still got it, Joe. Oh yeah, sorry.
One underclassman I wanted to ask you about, Johnny Wilson of Florida State.
I saw that.
Have you watched him, studied him, and what did you think if you did?
I studied him a lot because I was also watching Coleman, but watching his teammate. He's so tall. And he's not going to create a lot of yards after the catch. And I think that limits kind of like his use and his skill. So I think to me, I view him more as like a third rounder at best because of just, yes, he has the height, the catching range, which are all natural. I think his hands are okay. I would say pretty good. But I think too is just that he's limited because I'm curious what he runs because, of course he's he's 6'7", so he's going to take a little build up speed. But
he might be in the 4.6s. I mean, I don't.
That's right. And so I kind of look at him as a middle rounder. And but I do think if you're on a good offense and he's your number 3 weapon in that offense, like I would like that as his role. But like as opposed to being like, I don't see him as like, oh yeah, you put this guy as the X and he's your number 2 and he's winning a 1-on-1. But as a part of your offense, I like him.
I was surprised. I didn't expect a guy that would be a superior athlete. He's not. He doesn't separate. And I don't think that was the expectation going in. But I was disappointed, especially in like contested catches, 50-50 balls.
Yeah,
Like he should be better with that type of size. I don't think he uses it enough to his advantage. Um,
I agree.
and I mean, I don't think he's a natural hands catcher. I really don't. I think he's an average athlete, not a natural hands catcher.
It's not
You
that
he
he's
re-
not fast, he's not explosive. That's
what
what it's,
and
and
he's
that's
not he's not efficient with his movements. Like his arms are flailing
yeah.
everywhere, and like so like when he gears down, safety's all over it, or corners all over it because I mean he you can read it a mile away. He is at his best where uh is actually the Louisville tape from last year where he just destroyed that
I watched that
secondary.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of posts, a lot of
Yep.
verticals. I mean,
Build up
one
speed.
cut, go. Yeah, exactly. Let
Yes.
him build
Yep.
it up, use a little hesitation, and go. And that's where he's at his best. And it's just, can he develop more to his game? And I really question that.
I did too.
I compared him to a lesser talented version of like a Devin Funchess, where he's kind of stuck in between. Is he a tight end? Is he a receiver?
Mm-hmm.
Like he has talent, but it's just he's just not as talented version of that. And so, where do you draft a guy like that? I don't know. It's tough. He did accept a Senior Bowl invite. That'll be big for
Okay.
him. Get down there in Mobile and kind of show what you can do. But I mean, it doesn't bring any special teams value. That hurts you, when you're trying
Because he's
to.
not a freak and you can't run him down on as a gunner, like
Yeah,
where he just
right.
overwhelms everybody. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
figuring out his role and where he fits is a little tough. Wilson's a guy that needs to make some noise this year to kind of, this is what I can do really well. I mean, there are explosive plays on his tape. I don't want to
yeah.
sound like I'm just bashing him. He over the last 2 years, he has, if not the most, the second most catches of 20 plus yards in the ACC. So he's been a
6 7
guy that
vertical.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, he can make some plays. But again, yeah, you want to give him that runway, one cut at most, and let him go make some plays. So he's an interesting one, a guy that I know I've heard or I've received tweets asking, "Oh, how high in the first round is he going to go?" And it's like, guys, he's not. He's just not that
No,
type of player. And
he's not.
like a lot of these guys we talk about, Trotters not that type of player. Some of these underclassmen, they get pushed out there in those first round mocks, and it's just like, all right, we got to temper our expectations a little.
Well, yeah, and Johnny's the 6'7" receiver. He has a line to him.
Yeah.
Like that. It's the tall guy. Like so, so that's how people are going to remember him. That's how I remembered him when I first watched him last year, early on. But no, I'm kind of glad to hear you say that because I knew he had some hype. He was one of the first receivers I watched in the summer, and I remember even when he texted me about Coleman, I was like, "Oh, Wilson," because I was like, "I hope you don't have him in the first round."
Yeah, right.
But it was, but I watched him, and I think we're on the same page where it's just more of an oozer. Another guy that I thought declared, but it was just because he was listed as a true junior, but it was really because of the COVID years. Theo Johnson, a tight end for Penn State, who is very interesting in this class because of what the skill set he brings, which I think is more of a why. But do you have thoughts on Johnson? Because I watched him this morning, and I'm glad I did.
Well, first of all, great like backstory. Like there was like his parents. There was a domestic incident, and I mean, he's one of 6 boys. Grew up in Canada, and there's domestic issues with his parents, and with his mom, they fled and kind of had to rebuild their lives. And I mean, he's been very open about all of this, and it's just a pretty inspiring story what his mom's been able to do. So that first and foremost stands out with him. But then he is a really toolsy player. And I think it's interesting when you compare and contrast the 2 Penn State tight ends, Tyler Warren being the other one. I think Tyler Warren's probably the better football player. Theo Johnson's maybe the better prospect in terms of just having better tools to work with.
The classic story.
Right. And yeah, well, it's kind of like TBD to see how this plays out because he's a guy that has you see the speed, you see the mismatch potential. You just kind of wish there was more. So, he's a guy that I think teams are optimistic about, but you just kind of left you wanting a little bit more. You like the athleticism before and after the catch. He can get open. He can make that first man miss. They lined him up everywhere, and they put him in the backfield. He'd be in the
That's what
wing.
I noticed.
Yeah, they put him in the slot. So when you have that type of athleticism, you have that luxury. But I just came away from his tape wanting a little bit more compared to what traits that he offers. But again, he's another one of these players that you're going to bet on because
Yeah.
he moves differently than everybody else. As long as you feel like he's coachable, I think you have a level of optimism with Theo Johnson that is going to make him probably somewhere in the top 3 or 4 rounds.
Yeah, that's I look at him as more of that third round range again.
Yeah.
This is the classic tight end bet is just pick the biggest, fastest athletes and hope they figured it out. Like, and especially one that played, and no offense to our Canadian listening audience, is sometimes maybe they're underdeveloped, even if they go through college experience, in Penn State. Kind of, Penn State's a little loosey with some development with some of their players, some guys that kind of stay plateau there. So you maybe hope that there's more to him. And tight end is such a hard position. And it's maybe, like you just said, he's bounced around. They're using all the positions. They bounce him everywhere. And that's what was apparent to me. That's when I watched him because I was like, all right, who the hell is this guy? Why did he declare? And so I scanned through 3 games this morning trying to watch him. And it's like, okay, they bounce him around here. That means the coaches like him. It means like, okay, we can use him in this way, which I was like, okay, that's good. He has that natural hand-eye coordination that I really like as far as when the ball comes his way. He didn't have a lot of catches. I think he only had 30-something catches this year. Ball does come his way. That thing, he's snatching that thing. And he's very comfortable getting upfield. And like I think this guy was a better player and a better prospect at this time right now. But this is why I liked Tucker Kraft last year. I think we both did. But that natural athleticism or where they're big, grab the ball and get upfield right away, and they're getting those yards. And I mean, we're seeing Kraft kind of move up a little bit these last few weeks. Way to go, Dane. Yeah. He looks good, man.
Yeah.
And then once Musgrave comes back, it's like, oh boy.
I understandably needed time coming from South Dakota State. He was an underclassman.
They even said it on the broadcast that how in camp they're like, okay, he's gonna need some time, but they said every week he's just boom, 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 boom. Which,
you're that big. I mean, you're a ball winner, and you have two-way potential as a blocker and receiver. Yeah, and Theo Johnson, he's verified 6060, so he's 6'6", and he's right around 260 pounds. So he has a projectable body, and he doesn't look lumbering at all. I mean, he carries it well. So
I like to do the whole guessing game when I first watch a guy, and I'm like, okay, I'd say I thought 6'4", 255, or 6'4", like there, and I was like, he's 6'6", and I was like, okay, all
he's
right,
6060. Well, this is what he was in the spring for scouts. 6060, 258. Big hands, 10-inch hands. 33 and an eighth arms. Over 80-inch wingspan. I mean, those are all plus numbers, and at that size, I would guess he's going to run between 4.58, 4.63, somewhere in that range in the 40. I mean, he is
on this guy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so Tyler Warren, the other Penn State tight end, has not. I don't think he's announced yet whether he's coming back or maybe he has. I haven't noticed or I haven't seen it if he has. But that'll be an interesting compare and contrast because again, I think Tyler Warren might be the better football player right now. He's a toolsy guy as well. I mean, he has plenty to work with, just not as much as Theo Johnson. So both Penn State guys will be really interesting in this class.
Yeah. Last one I want to shout out, or last name I bring up, is Utah's Sion Vaki. Declared, who's a fun two-way player.
Is he a safety or running back?
Man, he's a pretty good running back.
I know he was.
He's great on screens, like catching the ball and stuff. He was shredding USC, I believe it was, when I watched him on offense. But defense too. I know he's a plus player. At first I was like, sophomore and everything, but he's a 2019 high school grad. But but still, interesting player.
I need to do more work on him.
I did too.
Because he's
a football player. He's just fun to watch every time I watch Utah.
He is fun, and it'll be really interesting to do a little more digging to see how teams look at him, what position and what best long term, that kind of thing. So he's interesting.
I know what was his. I was curious what was his weight. It was right around 200, right? 208. Okay, hell yeah. There we go. Let's do that. Okay. Running back could be be in your future as well. Any other early declares? You want to get to the transfer portal? I'll jump right into that.
Yeah, let's hit on some of these transfers, especially these quarterbacks, because it's a couple guys we thought might be in this draft class that won't be. Dylan Gabriel, getting that Nike money, going to Oregon. I think, I mean, he's not a big time prospect, and so I think some people were surprised that he decided to go back to school and not go to the NFL. He's making more money this year than he would have
Yes.
made next
Yes.
year in the NFL.
Yes.
So not that
It
much of
was
a surprise.
smart business decision right there.
Yeah. Riley Leonard,
Yeah.
your guy, going to Notre Dame. That'll be a really interesting fit. I see
I
how
like
that
that a
how that
lot.
works out. Yeah, I don't. This wasn't a great year for Leonard. I didn't
No.
think.
I remember
Obviously
we
had
talked
that.
about the Clemson game, I believe, and we were laughing
Yeah,
because everyone was like, "Man, Leonard," and me and you were like, "That was actually one of his lesser games."
yeah, right.
If you watched them,
When you watch his tape, you just don't see a ton of NFL throws this
nope.
year. But interested to see what he could do at Notre
Yeah,
Dame.
he's
That
such a good athlete, and he's naturally accurate. And it's just, again, I think he's one of these guys that didn't know he was going to be a quarterback. So
right.
like he was a basketball player. So it's
Yeah.
like I think he's just going like, "Oh, I'm this guy." Oh,
Hmm.
okay. I think it's coming to him a little bit. I'm fascinated in watching this year. I thought that's a fantastic fit. He could rise up, but again, I agree with you because watching that offense was frustrating at times because there was so much quick game, and that was
Yeah.
my worry this summer. And again, were they doing that because that's all he can handle, or because so very fascinated to watch Leonard this year.
I am a little worried because Notre Dame is going to lose both tackles.
Yes.
Joe Alt and Blake
Yeah, and they're
Fisher, the right
decent too,
tackle,
right?
already declared. Yeah, he more of a questionable decision by him, I think. I don't think he's
Yeah,
going to
where
get
do you have
drafted.
Fisher? Yeah,
I don't know. I did not like his tape at all, but
I
he's
didn't either.
talented. So it's like, okay, at some point, probably third, fourth round, a team's
Okay,
gonna take a
okay.
chance because again, you're talented, but the tape was not pretty. But
Someone asked
again,
why I didn't have him in the first round of my mock, and I was like,
I,
that
I
one
don't know. Have
surprised
you
me.
watched him? I mean,
Yeah, that
that's
one surprised me.
yeah.
Maybe
But
go
again, he
back.
is talented, so it's like okay,
Yeah,
but he's gonna be more of a project for you. W- but yeah, what is that offense going to look like? I mean, Sam Hartman, I think got frustrated with the lack of receiver help this year in that
yeah,
offense. Audric Estime, we're assuming is going to go to the NFL.
yeah.
So that offense is going to look very different next year. And so what they do to really accentuate what Riley Leonard can do and try to do better than what they did with Hartman because Riley Leonard's obviously a much different quarterback with,
Yeah,
can win inside the pocket, outside the pocket. Is going to give you a rushing element. How they tap into that would be interesting.
it will be. Yeah, that's another one. My other QB3 for about 2 weeks. Tyler Van Dyke visited Wisconsin. Thank you for that text. I had several people hit me up about it. I was kind
You
of
probably woke up that morning and were like,
well,
oh.
it becomes it's your guy. Like I know him. And and I'm
Yeah,
like, you know anything about this? I'm like, no, I don't know
right. What'd you get
this.
him for Christmas? Yeah, right.
I think he's a size 14. Yeah, give him some new shoes. But yeah, Kyle McCord from Ohio State visited Nebraska, it appears,
Yeah, and
as
that's
well as a
interesting because the
top
top,
recruit.
high school recruit, Raiola, was originally Ohio State, then
Yes.
decommitted, then went to
Yes.
Georgia,
Yes.
and obviously he's got the family connections at Nebraska, so seems like that could be happening. But where does that leave Kyle McCord? And so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because that happened
It
like bang bang too. Visited and
yeah.
then they got the number one recruit. And I was like, oh, okay.
Nebraska's got some deep pockets again with
Yes, they
NIL.
do.
NIL changes everything, and
Yes, they do.
it's all about what a booster's willing to spend. And so that's definitely an interesting quarterback situation to watch. And hey, it'd be good for the Big Ten. It'd be good for that program that
Oh,
has
absolutely.
really struggled to be relevant here the last few years.
I know it would be bad. Yeah, for just even for nostalgia reasons. How I remember
Oh
watching
yeah,
Nebraska, watching the I option I play after play. The Mike Rowley told a story when he got to Nebraska and he was visiting. I think they're in the indoor facility, and he was like, "Oh, you guys have the fields like aligned this way, like north." I don't know what the story was. Do you have it this way? He's like, "Oh, we always did it like east west or something like that." And he was just saying an offhand comment.
yeah,
And the guy that was giving the tour just goes, "Well, we can change that. Like we can flip that around and like do that. Like we can have that done for you by tomorrow." And it was like, "How much would that cost?" And it was like, "It costs about like 80,000 or something like that." And he was just like, "No, no, no, no. I do not need that. I was just
right,
commenting
right.
on that." But to speak to Nebraska's pockets, it's like that's how they treat that football program and really all their programs. Look at how they're doing
Mm-hmm.
women's volleyball right now. It's
Right.
pretty awesome. Also some DJ Ukulele visiting Florida State, which I think is very interesting. I would kind of
Yeah.
wanted him to follow that staff to Michigan State, maybe to kind of keep progressing, but we'll see.
Well, they brought the other Oregon State quarterback to Michigan State, who
They did.
is probably a better quarterback. I mean, he's younger. I haven't.
Younger.
I haven't studied him.
I know
but
who he is. Yeah,
he's dynamic. So, I think they're pretty excited about what he's going to bring to Michigan State.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Florida State would be a nice landing spot for him. I
just want to watch him keep getting developed because it was like,
right,
he still has a ways to go.
He does. The big one that I can't wait to see is Cam Ward.
Right?
Formerly of
Ohio State.
Well, I mean, but it's not. I don't think it's like because Miami's in the mix. I mean, he visited Miami, and sounds like there's a handful of teams here that are really in the mix for this kid, and he's still considering entering the draft.
Okay.
So it's not a question of just what college he's going to transfer to. The NFL is still on the table. So I know talking to our transfer portal guru here at The Athletic, Max Olson, does a great job covering all this stuff and tracking it. I mean, he's got options, and so it'll be really interesting to see what Cam Ward ends up doing. And yet, to your point, specifically Ohio State, interested to see what they do at quarterback with McCord likely not coming back, and I think they're fine with that. I think they told Kyle McCord, "Hey, you're gonna have some competition this offseason," and McCord's like, "All right, I'm out." So what do they do to bring in that competition? It'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm very curious for Ward, guys. His tape was very fun this first half of the year, much like how Wazoo season went, kind of tailed off at the end, but he's a very fun player, and he's gotten better.
Yeah,
you're betting on him keep getting better because there's some fun stuff he does.
I had an Ohio State fan ask me about him, and I was like, okay, how do I sum this up? Okay, well, Kyle McCord, he was like the Ferris wheel at the carnival. Like there are some ups, but eventually, you're going back down. You know what you're getting basically.
Yeah.
With Cam Ward, it's more of the kind of rickety roller coaster where you're gonna have fun. When you get off, you might be sick to your stomach. You might want to get right back on. I don't know. That's kind of the excitement. Yeah, right. So it's gonna be more of an experience. And yeah, like I said, you might be sick to your stomach after that experience, but at the same time, you might want to go right back on and have fun again. So it's more of a roller coaster with Cam Ward.
That's a fun comparison, though. No, that's perfect. Because that's how he is. Hey, he's gonna be exciting. It'll be different. It'll be different than what you had.
No doubt. No doubt.
The other one, this is just for me. Braden Shager from Hawaii, the quarterback there, transferred. Very interested to see where he ends up. I watched 2 early game Hawaii games early this season. He was interesting, so I just want to keep an eye on him. The other one,
Will Howard's that guy for me.
Who's that?
Formerly of Kansas State.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I think he's
pretty good actually.
I'm very interested to see where he goes. And then off of the quarterbacks, I was really interested to see some of these guys that we expected to be part of this draft class no longer in this draft class. Princely Umen Ellen, the pass rusher, we thought would be probably a 3rd round pick in this draft. He transferred to Ole Miss. The other guy that transferred to Ole Miss, Antwain Wells from South Carolina, really talented NFL receiver. He's going to be at Ole Miss now.
Yeah, so glad I studied him.
Yeah. Get a head start. Trevor Etienne, the Florida running back. We don't know where he's going yet, but I mean, obviously that's a talented player.
I see his mom debating with Florida fans on Twitter. It's actually, she's doing a very good job. Actually, she's using their own arguments against him. She's having fun with it. It's actually pretty fun.
RJ Oben, the other Duke player to go to Notre Dame. Obviously got NFL bloodlines there. So, he's a pretty good player. So yeah, some players we thought would be in the 2024 NFL draft class, going back to school, new place, taking advantage of that NIL.
Things are changing. The last guy I wanted to mention, for me anyways, was a guy that was on Feldman's Freaks, which is Thor Griffith from Harvard. The pride of Matt Burke, transferring to Louisville. But if anyone doesn't know, Griffith is, again, a freak. 6'2", 320. This is all listed. This is all reported. So, again, you have to, pinch of salt. But they can count at Harvard, right? So, the 45 reps of 225, which would be the combine record or near it.
Right around it, yeah.
Right around 44 might be the record. A sub 5.040, which is put him again in rare defensive tackle territory.
Yeah.
But even if he's 80% of this, I am very interested to watch how Griffith looks at Louisville. So I did want to give him a shout out.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mekhi Muse, the Georgia returner, who's like 5'5" and like just fun, just a fun player to watch. So I'm curious where he ends up. I think that's it. We covered what was supposed to be a tidy, small show. Me and Dane.
I looked down, it's like 50 minutes. I'm like, what the? Where?
I know. I was like, oh, we got to start talking transfers. We're what, 25 minutes in? Nope.
Yeah.
But that was
just
so
another
much
week.
Just another week.
Pros,
Pros. Yes, we always are nice and tidy around this hour mark. But thank you guys so much for joining us. This was a ton of fun talking early declares, talking transfer portals. But we will be here every single Wednesday. We got the college football playoff coming up. We got all-star games coming up. The draft season is upon us, so get ready. We'll be here every single week. See you guys next time.